Okay, let's just get right into it. You know that feeling, right? You've seen them, maybe at a theme park or some dusty old arcade. You see an animatronic, and you get this weird, deeply unsettling feeling in your gut. I get it too. It's this universal sense of unease that's just really hard to explain.
So that's the big question here. What is that feeling, and why on earth do we get it? Well, to figure it out, we're going to go on a little investigation. We're going to find the most unsettling animatronics that are still out there and see them for ourselves. And our whole quest kicks off in this small town in West Virginia at a place called Billy Bob's Wonderland. Now, this spot is legendary, and for good reason. Some of the animatronics here are the very ones that inspired the massive horror game phenomenon Five Nights at Freddy's.
We're here to see the ghosts of an old pizza chain called Showbiz Pizza, and specifically their animatronic animal band, the Rock-afire Explosion. And let me tell you, seeing them in person for the very first time, well, it just hits different.
And yeah, that's pretty much the first reaction. Even if you kind of grew up with something like this, seeing these huge hulking figures in the flesh is just immediately jarring. They're big, they're old, and they are staring right at you from the stage of a nearly empty arcade.
So when we break it down, a few things really stand out. First, they were playing a Christmas-themed show, which just felt wrong. It made the whole thing feel way more uncanny. Then, the main mascot, Billy Bob, seemed to glitch out and just stare directly into the camera. But the number one thing, it was their eyes. They had this strange, vacant, but somehow focused look that genuinely makes you feel like they're tracking you.
So, to try and measure this feeling, we came up with our own little scale, the uncanny rating. For Billy Bob's, we're giving them a solid 7.5. The eyes are just deeply, deeply unsettling. But the machines themselves are actually in pretty good shape, which, weirdly enough, keeps them from being even more terrifying.
All right, let's head to our next stop. We're flying over to San Francisco to check out an animatronic known less for how it looks and more for its absolutely terrifying, relentless sound. Everybody, meet Laughing Sal.
The second you hear it, you get it. This is not just a laugh. It's a loud, grating, mechanical cackle that just does not stop. It is absolutely the kind of sound that would fuel nightmares for weeks.
So what's the deal with Sal? Well, she was originally designed to stand outside carnival rides, to attract crowds with her laughter. But over the decades, as the originals wore down, they started to malfunction. Their movements got all jerky and unnatural, and that recorded laugh, which was already pretty creepy, started to sound even more sinister. It's that combo of erratic movement and a horrifying sound that makes you feel genuinely unsafe.
But here's the surprising part. On our uncanny rating, Laughing Sal only gets a 6.0. I know, right? While the laugh is truly awful, the animatronic is so obviously a carnival doll that it doesn't have that almost human quality that makes something really unsettling. It's loud, it's startling for sure, but it's not as deeply strange as the band back at Billy Bob's.
For our next piece of evidence, we have to go deeper. And I mean that literally. We're talking about something called submechanophobia, the fear of man-made objects submerged in water. And believe me, this adds a whole new layer of terror. I mean, think about it. Machines do not belong in the water. So when you see one, especially a large humanoid one just lurking beneath the surface where you can't see it clearly, your brain just screams, that is wrong. Which brings us all the way to Australia to see an animatronic called the Bunyip.
And this quote just says it all, doesn't it? The feeling isn't just creepy anymore. It's a deep, primal sense of actual terror. Seeing this thing rise out of the murky water is a profoundly unsettling experience that just hits on a completely different level.
And our rating? Well, it reflects that. The Bunyip gets a terrifying 8.0, our highest score yet. That combination of its monstrous look and the whole submechanophobia thing makes it the clear frontrunner for the most uncanny animatronic we've seen.
Okay, for our final stop, we're visiting a place that might be really familiar to a lot of you, Chuck E. Cheese. And this is where things get really complex, because here the creepiness is all mixed up with a heavy dose of childhood nostalgia, which makes the familiar feel very, very strange. The history here is just wild. When all the Showbiz pizza places closed down, a lot of their Rock-afire animatronics weren't just thrown away. No, they were converted. Their skins were literally ripped off and replaced, turning them into the Chuck E. Cheese characters we know. So Rolf the Wolf became Chuck E. Cheese, Fats the Gorilla became Mr. Munch. You're actually looking at the same mechanical skeletons, just wearing these distorted, new costumes.
And that's when we saw the final, most chilling detail. After the show was over and the curtains came down, the animatronics didn't stop. They kept moving, just twitching, and in one case, Chuck E. Cheese slowly turned his head and seemed to wave from behind the curtain. The show was over, but the machine was still alive.
So this left us with our biggest puzzle. Why did this place, which uses the exact same animatronic skeletons as Billy Bob's, feel so much more unsettling? It was clear our investigation had found the what, but to really understand the why, we needed a scientific explanation. So we called in an expert.
To finally get to the bottom of this feeling, we talked with psychologist Dr. Steph. She's an expert in a concept that basically explains everything we've seen. It's called the uncanny valley.
So the uncanny valley is basically that dip in our emotional response when a robot or a doll looks almost human, but these tiny little imperfections make it feel eerie and just wrong. It's that too close for comfort feeling.
So let's walk through this curve. At first, as a robot gets more human-like features, we tend to like it more. But then, we get to the edge of the valley. This is where things get almost perfect, but these tiny little flaws, like the jerky movements of Laughing Sal or the dead staring eyes at Billy Bob's, suddenly get magnified and our positive feeling just plummets into revulsion. Now, if a machine could cross that valley and become totally indistinguishable from a human, our good feelings would come back. But the animatronics we've seen, they live deep, deep in that valley.
And this brings us right back to Chuck E. Cheese. Dr. Steph explains that the reason it felt the most uncanny is because it had the two perfect ingredients. First, familiarity. So many of us went there as kids, so that image is locked in our memory. And second, decay. The animatronics are old, they're poorly maintained, they're breaking down. And that combination of a familiar, happy memory with the visual evidence of decay, that's what creates the ultimate uncanny feeling.
To really drive this point home, Dr. Steph gave one final terrifying example. An android designed to be hyper-realistic. It's almost perfect, but there's a slight lag in its movement, this tiny delay between its speech and its expression. And its eyes? They move smoothly and then they just stop. Completely. It's a tiny little detail a real human would never make, and it is profoundly unsettling. That, right there, is the very bottom of the uncanny valley.
And this leaves us with a final thought. This uncanny feeling, it comes from something that feels so close to reality that our brain flags it as a potential danger, even when we know it isn't real. So, as our technology gets better and our machines get ever closer to being human, will we eventually cross that valley? Or are we just going to find new and maybe even more subtle reasons to be unsettled?